Okay, everybody, I want to welcome you all back to my updated version of MathewV21688. It's the 3,000 subscriber special for Grapebuy789, in which this time around we're going to be playing another game on the CD-ROM, and that game is the 1995 PC version of Jeopardy. So, let's give it a try. Have a good game. There we go.
Welcome to Jeopardy! Let's begin our game.
Use the enter key. Yeah, we'll let her be a player. And we'll let her be a player.
Hi, I'm Sandra Hart. I'm a practicing psychiatrist, and I also teach neural anatomy at a medical school. During my vacation time, I love to travel.
Hi, my name is Willa Bernstein. I'm in-house legal counsel for a computer corporation, and in my private time, I play my violin for a local symphony.
All right, contestants, let's begin round one.
Texas.
There's one daily double on the board, and here are the
TV
categories.
animals, ancestors, declaration signers, miscellaneous, and we'll close it out with forms of address.
Good luck. Contestant number one, we'll start with you.
Start with my home state first, Texas 100.
The answer there is...
The Texas state seal features this lone symbol surrounded by olive and live oak branches.
Contestant number one.
What is a star?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number one.
The Mexican War established this river as the international boundary between Texas and Mexico.
Contestant number one.
What is the Rio Grande?
You are correct. Contestant number one.
Hall of Fame and Museum in Waco honors this law enforcement organization.
Contestant number three.
Oh, Alex, sorry.
No, I'm afraid that is not correct. Contestant number one.
What are the Texas Rangers?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number one.
Fair Park in Dallas is the home of the Texas State Fair and the site of this bowl game stadium.
Contestant number one.
What is the Cotton Bowl?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number one.
This inland port is connected to Galveston Bay by a 50-mile ship channel.
Contestant number two.
Houston?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number two.
This American sport's ancestors are soccer and rugby.
Contestant number one.
What is football?
You are correct. Contestant number one.
This licorice stick's ancestor was the Chalimo. Johann Denner lengthened it and added 2 keys.
Contestant number
What's
one.
a clarinet?
You are correct. Contestant number one.
The ancestor of this domesticated bird is the wild red jungle fowl.
Contestant number two.
The chicken?
You are correct. Contestant number two.
John Napier's bones, or calculating rods, were the ancestor of this logarithmic device.
Contestant number one.
What is the abacus?
I'm sorry.
No.
That's wrong. Contestant number three.
A slide rule?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number three.
Daily double.
It's a daily double.
Just going to do the maximum allowed of $500, all right? This Virgil hero is considered the mythical ancestor of the Roman people. Aeneas?
You are correct. Contestant number three.
Referring to his bold signature here marked there, I guess King George will be able to read that.
Contestant number 1.
Who is John Hancock?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 1.
New Hampshire signer Josiah Bartlett also had the honor of casting the first vote for this first constitution.
Contestant number 3.
The Articles of Independence?
Sorry. Contestant number 1.
What are the Articles of Confederation?
You are correct. Contestant number 1.
In 1770, Robert Treat Paine prosecuted the British troops indicted for murder in this incident.
Contestant number 2.
The Boston Massacre.
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 2.
If Walter Mondale had won in 1984, his running mate's form of address would have been this.
Contestant number 3.
Vice President? No.
Sorry. Contestant number 2.
Madam Vice President Ferraro.
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 2.
A dolphin named Susie played this title role.
Contestant number 1.
Who is Flipper?
You are
What is
correct.
Flipper?
Contestant number 1.
The 650-pound black bear lived in the Florida Everglades with the Wedlows.
Contestant number 2.
Curious George?
Wrong. Contestant number 3.
Gentle Ben.
Correct. Contestant number 3.
Yukon King was the canine companion of this Mountie.
Contestant number 3.
Sergeant Preston.
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 3.
Okay. Gene Autry's Wonder Horse. He starred in his own series in the 1955-56 season.
Contestant number 3.
Champion.
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 3.
Young Ken McLaughlin owned this horse whose name is Swedish for little girl.
Contestant number 3.
Flicka?
You are correct. Contestant number 3.
Charles Carroll of Maryland, who outlived all other signers, was also a founder of this railroad.
Contestant number 3.
Union Pacific? No.
Sorry, that's incorrect. Contestant number 2.
The Baltimore and Ohio?
You are correct. Contestant number 2. The answer there is...
The Montgolfier brothers designed the first one of these to fly unmanned and untethered.
Contestant number 3.
A wing? No.
Sorry. Contestant number 1.
What is an airplane?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
That's wrong. Contestant number 2.
Nope. Hot air balloon.
No, I'm afraid that is not correct. Contestant number 2.
The name of this wood that can float is from the Spanish for float or raft.
Contestant number 1.
What is balsa?
You are correct. Contestant number 1.
Sometimes called the queen of the water, it's found in slow-moving streams and Monet paintings.
Contestant number 2.
The water lily?
You are correct. Contestant number 2.
This igneous rock that can float has the same chemical composition as granite.
Contestant number 1.
What is pumice?
You are correct. Contestant number 1.
These two terms refer to the goods that fall or are pitched from a wrecked ship or one that's in distress.
Contestant number 2.
Flotsam and jetsam.
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 2.
A student at West Point or the Air Force Academy is addressed as this.
Contestant number 2.
Plebe? No.
Sorry. Contestant number 3.
Cadet?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 3.
For the 50 people in the United States who hold this post, one form of address is Excellency.
Contestant number 3.
Governor.
You are correct. Contestant number 3.
This common three-letter term of respect came from the Latin senior, meaning elder.
Contestant number 1.
What is sir?
You are correct. Contestant number 1.
Still used by some law firms, when it's put after a man's name, it takes the place of Mr.
Contestant number 2.
Esquire.
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 2.
While chairman of the Navy Board in 1776 and 1777, Francis Hopkinson is believed to have designed this.
Contestant number 2.
Vermont flag? No.
I'm sorry, that's wrong. Contestant number 3.
The American flag.
You are correct. Now for the double Jeopardy round, with 2 daily
American
doubles
history,
somewhere on the board
Knights
in
and knighthood,
these categories.
Rulers, modern theater, the body human, and finally, zones.
Good luck. We'll begin the game with contestant number 3. The answer is...
In 1468, at the age of 16, the son of King John II of Aragon was named King of Sicily.
Contestant number 2.
Juan Carlos? No.
Wrong. Contestant number 3.
Ferdinand II?
You are correct. Contestant number 3.
This Holy Roman Empress had 16 children, including Marie Antoinette.
Contestant number 3.
Who is Maria Theresa?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 3.
The title of this Peter Schaffer play is Latin for horse. Peter Schaeffer, I think.
Contestant number 2.
Equus?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 2.
Eugene's mother shows him how she danced with George Raft in this playwright's Broadway Bound.
Contestant number 3.
Moss Hart.
Sorry, incorrect. Contestant number 2.
Neil Simon.
You are correct. Contestant number 2. The clue? It's the Daily Double.
Waiting for Godot had its world premiere in this country, Samuel Beckett's adopted home, in 1953. France.
You are correct. Contestant number 2.
Return to the Forbidden Planet is a rock musical based on the Shakespearean play.
Contestant number 2.
Caesar.
Wrong. Contestant number 3.
The Tempest.
You are correct. Contestant number 3. Here is the clue.
Cats was based on his book Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats.
Contestant number 3.
Theodore Geisel.
Sorry. Contestant number 2.
T.S. Eliot.
You are correct. Contestant number 2.
It's just under the pharynx, and its name uses most of the same letters.
Contestant number 3.
The larynx.
You are correct. Contestant number 3.
You'll find nerve endings called cones in these sensory organs.
Contestant number 3.
Parathyroids?
Sorry.
Nope.
That's incorrect. Contestant number 1.
What are the eyes?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 1.
This muscular tube that carries food from the throat to the stomach is also called the gullet.
Contestant number 1.
What is the esophagus?
You are correct. Contestant number 1.
A short stalk connects this hormone-producing master gland to the hypothalamus.
Contestant number 1.
What is the pituitary gland?
You are correct. Contestant number 1.
The name of this upper arm bone comes from the Latin for upper arm.
Contestant number 1.
What is the humerus?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 1.
Prince Achille Murat, this French emperor's nephew, settled near Tallahassee, Florida in 1825.
Contestant number 1.
Who was Napoleon?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 1.
A noted marine biologist, this Japanese emperor wrote several books on the subject.
Contestant number 1.
Who was Hirohito?
You are correct. Contestant number 1.
This confessor was the last descendant of Alfred the Great to serve as King of England.
Contestant number 3.
Edwin? No.
Wrong. Contestant number 1.
Who was Alfred?
Oh, sorry. That's not right.
Edward the Confessor.
Contestant number 1.
On January 1st, 1790, he initiated the custom of a presidential reception on New Year's Day.
Contestant number 3.
It's on the tip of my tongue. No.
Sorry. Incorrect. Contestant number 2.
George Washington?
Correct. Contestant number 2.
In 1969, the U.S. destroyer Evans was cut in half by this country's carrier Melbourne.
Contestant number 1.
What is Australia?
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 1.
This communication satellite was put into orbit July 10th, 1962.
Contestant number 2.
ComSat? No.
Sorry, that's incorrect. Contestant number 3.
Telstar.
You are correct. Contestant number 3.
Adolf Berle and Raymond Moley were members of this president's brain trust. Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Contestant number 3.
He was president about 6.5 months. 4 before he was shot and 2.5 after.
Contestant number 3.
James Garfield.
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 3. The answer is...
In addition to his helmet, body armor, and steel shoes, a knight wore these metal gloves.
Contestant number 3.
Hand pads.
Sorry, that's incorrect. Contestant number 2.
Gauntlets.
You are correct. Contestant number 2.
Knights follow this code of behavior, which comes from a French word for horseman.
Contestant number 3.
Chivalry, I knew that one.
You are correct. Contestant number 3.
This heavy club with a spiked or flanged head was used to crush an opponent's armor.
Contestant number 2.
A mace, I knew that one.
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 2.
Knights are addressed as sir. The wives of knights are addressed in this way.
Contestant number 1.
What is lady?
You are correct. Contestant number 1.
At 14, a page moved up to this position to look after a knight's arms and care for his horses.
Contestant number 3.
A squire, I knew that one.
Yes, that's correct. Contestant number 3.
Rod Serling called it a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to man.
Contestant number 1.
What is the Twilight Zone?
You are correct. Contestant number 1.
Catch the ball here in football and you get 6 points.
Contestant number 2.
The end zone.
You are correct. Contestant number 2.
In October 1979, the U.S. government gave back about 65% of this zone to its home country.
Contestant number 1.
What is Vietnam?
Oh, sorry. That's not right. Contestant number 2.
The Panama Canal Zone?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's correct. Contestant number 2.
Apples are grown in this zone, not subtropical or tropical.
Contestant number 3.
The cool zone, no.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's wrong. Contestant number 2.
Temperate zone.
You are correct. Contestant number 2. The answer there is one of the 2 daily doubles.
She's going to go 1,000. All right, she'll take the lead if she gets this right. There are about 15 degrees of longitude wide. Time zones.
You are correct. The final Jeopardy category is contestant number 1. What would you like to wager? The final Jeopardy clue is...
The original full name of this Mexican port translates to Rich Town of the True Cross.
Contestant number 3, your final Jeopardy response was... Oh, I'm sorry.
Veracruz,
that's wrong.
so I got it
Let's see
wrong.
what contestant number 3 wagered.
I got it wrong too, so I end up with nothing this game.
Your
Let's
total?
see off for another one.
Contestant number 1, your final Jeopardy response was... Sorry, incorrect. Let's see what contestant number 1 wagered. Your total? Contestant number 2, your final Jeopardy response was... Correct. Let's see what contestant number 2 wagered. Your total? Sorry you didn't win. Sharpen your wits and try again.
Did you notice that there was Mickey and Donald? Did you notice that there was Mickey and Donald again in your video?